Time to get crazy as we go into the mind of madness. We're entering that last stretch. Pauper states is coming up for my province, or sorry, states slash provincials. Gotta remember that we Canadians are running it too, but states is just such an easier word to say. But our provincial championship is this Sunday. Others will be next weekend. So we do actually have one more episode to talk about, or talk about the format, and that's going to be for next week's hindsight episode, where we talk about kind of how everything went, what caught me off guard, and everything that I may have been surprised by, wasn't prepared for, or what I just dealt with in general. And whether or not, what our accuracies and inaccuracies were. I believe if you've been with us for the state's prep, if not, if you can double back to episode 1 of this series, I am pretty close to confirming that I am using the Sentinel team I had come up with. It will be a Nimrod, a Graydon Creed, Bolivar Trask, and Senator Kelly, along with a Friend of Humanity and a WWE ring. Assuming that in my potential practice this Saturday, I don't just all of a sudden decide, you know what, I'm just playing a WWE team. Those are kind of the two options. It's either going to be a WWE team or the Nimrod team, because at this point, practice levels are kind of much higher with the Nimrod, and I am familiar with its strengths, weaknesses, and how to kind of play it when I'm in panic mode or off foot. That aside, I kind of want to cover some broad spectrum stuff, what to expect from this tournament. So we've already talked about some of the archetypes that were there and available to us. We know we've talked about Nimrod and how he's a potent figure. We've talked about all the WWE figures and how they're just really good, and it's something to be aware of. We've talked about the Avengers team and what it does, and how it just kind of still exists, and we have to be ready for it. We've also spent a little bit of time talking about support figures and just general keyword theme. Just spent a lot of time talking about all the possibilities. One of the things I didn't really address is that in this format, theme is not necessarily as potent as say constructed. Where constructed map picking goes a much longer way. In this one, it's really about one matchup, but if you can beat that matchup without having to worry about that map roll, and that of course is the Juggernaut, because the Juggernaut loses a lot of its effectiveness if you just rip the map out of his hands. But with a standard non-theme team, there are a lot of ways you can build that just have a ton of options, and you don't necessarily have to overcommit to building a theme team. And that was part of why I talked about all those support figures, because those are going to be the figures that you kind of use to put together the glue, as it were, for those teams. It's also why I tried as hard as I could to focus off of characters that were super keyword dependent. There were a few that were fairly keyword dependent, like Dr. Frankenstein made it into my reviews, and some of the Starfleet guys, though they are in a lot of cases still good, just better with Starfleet guys. That kind of situation kind of came up, but for the most part, non-theme teams are super playable in the format, and you're not giving up a great deal, because you can bring things like Prob, like Perplex, like Outwit, and whatnot. As well, there's on a non-theme team, the Stark Tower map bonus goes a long way, because it's 5 points effectively that you spend, expect to lose map, and get Prob on your team. Not bad. I know I'm sticking theme with my Sentinel team, and possibly if I go with the WWE team, because just more Prob is better, and the Sentinels are kind of lacking in Prob. And what's also a bonus is that the guys that I bring in off of the board, or from off the board, will add to the available characters I can use with Prob, because the character has to have the theme team keyword, or the keyword that the theme team has, and of course all the Sentinels and Friends of Humanity have that, so they kind of add to that collection of things. And that's kind of the strategy I'm going with in my head. Things I'm of course worried about, it came up in early conversations and in the non-theme team kind of sense. Lucy in the Sky and the uncommon Green Lantern big fears of mine because Pulse Wave is a super potent power, and Nimrod's just nightmare. It's his nightmare. Pulse Wave is less of a nightmare for the WWE figures, though. So if you are going with like some degree of Pulse Wave, you gotta have to think about how you're going to deal with the WWE as well. So just in general, if you're looking to build a team, you need several contingencies for what to be prepared for in Pauper. One of which is, of course, you got to be able to deal with Nimrod and know how to deal with him. A couple hints I can hand out, one of which is be careful about how much damage you do to him, because oddly enough, if you didn't bring out wit and you're not outwitting his defense power, if you do 4 damage, you do 2 damage, and when you do 2 or more damage to him, he gets one of these tokens that he can use to take a free action and heal himself. So there's kind of that uphill battle, especially as well if your opponent is really intelligent about using their Bolivar Trask, and getting him to heal up the Nimrods as well goes a long way towards making your day worse, to say the least. And of course, when you're dealing with Nimrod, don't go too heavy on the high attack rolls. It's tempting. Like, I've had situations come up where, and this specific situation, I was playing against a Nimrod, I was using the Undertaker, and I had a 14 attack on the Nimrod, and I was like, uh-oh. The second I rolled the dice, I realized I was in trouble because the minimum roll to hit was 4. And if I hit it just on a 4, Nimrod's rolling out of that. And that's kind of it's a hard head case to be in. So try to keep your Nimrod roll somewhere between 6 or 7 or higher. And you should, for the most part, have 7 or 8 or higher, and you should be good, because on the 7, they had the same odds to stop you as you did to hit them. And then the 8, it's the same kind of situation. They have the same odds to beat you. But, of course, the 8 has a less odds. So if you actually manage to nail the 8, they'll have a harder time of rolling out of it. It's weird math and weird voodoo stuff that I like. Go at Nimrod with lots of attacks, lots of little attacks. Poke him down, poke him down, poke him down, poke him down. Don't let him breathe either, because if you let him breathe for a second, he breathes in the form of pulse waves, poisons, psychic blasts, and energy explosions, and all sorts of stuff. So brace yourself for that. Also, be ready if your team doesn't have characters who don't have like a strict close combat focus, know how to play your characters in close combat, because WWE characters just don't care about your range or your ranged pulse waves, even for that matter. So as a result, you gotta find a way to take your characters that you plan on playing and imagine them without range, and how you're going to arrange, or without range attacks as an option, and know how to do that, because the WWE characters, if somebody brings an all WWE team, you're gonna have to fight in close combat, and if your characters liquefy in close combat, you may have a bigger problem than you think. So brace yourself for that inevitability, and know how to play your team in that inevitability. Know how to be patient with your TKs in that particular matchup. Things like that. Know how to change your play is an important element, because these characters, specifically the WWE, are just so weird. Also, you have to be ready for that, ready for shortened ranges with characters like Onslaught. Onslaught is going to be out there. Onslaught and Nimrod are probably going to be the most frequently tentpole portions of teams. Like, they're going to stick out on these teams, and you have to be super ready for that, and understand that it's going to hurt when they get there. So brace yourself, as it were. Aside from, all of that, I am losing network here. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, my bandwidth seems to be catching back up. Okay, we seem to be leveling out. No, I'm going to start jittering in a second. Bear with me, guys. I'm going to see if I can do something about this, or see what's up and go from there. Or I might just have a crappy stream for today. I don't know. What's going on, internet? Talk to me. Talk to me on my upstream, son. Okay. I apologize if this sucks right now. I deeply, deeply apologize. I hope it's not as bad as I was hoping for. So I'm going to try to speed through this worst case and just get you something. But it's probably not going to be as long or useful an episode anyway. But we've been talking about vague strategy for the most part and how to prepare yourself for this pauper format and how to be ready for the current environment of the format. And that aside, what else do we need to be ready for? We've talked about Onslaught. We've talked about Nimrod. We talked about WWE. Be ready for weird stuff as well, because this kind of stuff, this kind of play brings out weird ideas. And that's not a bad thing. So, you know, you've planned for the teams that we've talked about, and there's going to be plenty of them. But there are still options in this format that aren't necessarily those. Be aware of things that might actually catch you off guard or are completely different from things we've talked about. So familiarize yourself with characters that seem potent. I know I spent a lot of time in like kind of introduction episodes and whatnot on talking about characters that are just good in the common and uncommon slot that could potentially see some play in these states provincials tournaments. So looks like our network bars are all green again. The internet pipes are letting me talk. Where was I? Yeah. So prepare yourself for the weird, and know how to deal with the weird. And familiarize yourself with that. If you're using the wrestling ring with your Nimrods, familiarize yourself with the wrestling powers. If you're not using it, familiarize yourself with the wrestling powers. Don't let yourself get caught off guard by it. Don't let yourself get exposed by it. It's a feel bad moment to kind of be there and all of a sudden nothing's working for you. You don't want that. So be aware, be ready, know what's going on fully with all the characters on the board. Take advantage of the fact that you're now allowed to look at the back of cards. If something showed up and you're like, what? Take a second during your opponent's turn, familiarize yourself with the dial so you can plan your turns ahead a little better. It's one of the best kind of practices with this, you know, card. You can look at the back of the card. So look at the back of the card, see what's up, and, you know, use your opponent's turn to inform yourself thusly. Because it's one of the things I do when I'm playing in tournaments is my turns are fairly quick because I'm spending a lot of time evaluating my opponent's options during my turns, and at the same time looking at the options that they do choose to take on their turn and planning my reactions on their turn to do that. And one part of that now is just looking at the cards of characters you're unfamiliar with. Just remember how long their dials are, that sort of situation. Know where you got to be so that, you know, for instance, a Juggernaut, when does he stop being on those super unoutwittable, unpulse waveable, unpsychic blastable clicks? And then how do we react to that? And so on and so forth. So all of these are elements that will help you just get that extra level on your opponent. And just how to be ready and whatnot. Kind of babbling because originally I had planned on just spending a lot of time on the Tentpoles, but lo and behold, for the most part, they are Nimrod, Juggernaut, Onslaught, and like those are the ones that really take up a lot of points in format that are really big. Aside from that, there are a few, like Exodus is playable at that level, and is a pretty solid character for part of a Brotherhood team, especially if we include Emily Vogt and the unkillable Danger Room dudes. It's really just a fat team to try to deal with. Or even the Blob. Oh, geez, the Blob is so dense and hard to get through. Kind of like similar approach to Nimrod. Lots of little attacks to get him. Don't overcommit to, you know, perplexing up damage. Just perplex up attacks or your own defenses. His defenses are not particularly high until he just stops moving, in which case he just becomes harder and harder to hit. When he hits that point, be aware of where your focus is being directed and maybe don't let yourself get caught in situations where he's just going to hold you and do exactly what he's supposed to do. Know your board states for this. Yeah. Familiarize yourself with some of the special terrain that's legal in this format. There's a vehicle or two. The dune buggy is one that's really good in this format. Along with, of course, the WWE ring. We know how that works, but at the same time, familiarize yourself with the other ones that could be potential problems. Dune buggy -1 attack is not fun stuff, and that is going to be a bit of a nightmare to deal with for some characters. And when you're building your team, we've talked about a lot of team things, and this is one thing I try to tell people not to focus on. Do not focus on the hard counter, unless the hard counter counters everything. Kind of catch my drift. So if you have something that beats Nimrod, but only Nimrod, you may run into a bit of an issue if your local metagame does. And these are states events. Metagames are going to be different across different states and provinces. Teams, when you see the winners, things are going to get wacky in some cases, and you're going to look at it and go, well, how did that happen? And because you're not familiar with that particular area's metagame or what people are playing, you may not be fully aware. I know locally a couple of the teams that are planning on being played, and I know that my team is one of many consistent kind of this is going to show up all the time teams, so I am kind of bracing myself on that sort of level. What else? I think that honestly, I had a lot more initially to talk about today, but it's all kind of fumbled, and this waning internet has got me a little worried. But I am open up to questions. If you guys have any questions for me regarding the format, regarding this coming weekend and next weekend, fire away. I'm open to answering them. But we're kind of entering that phase where it's like time to we've done all the talking, we've done all the planning. How do we get ourselves ready in this last second? Because for me, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday are the only days I have left to practice, and Sunday's the big show. So I have 3 days left with which to get myself prepped. And that last planning stage is usually based on last-minute practice and more or less a little bit of map familiarity. One thing Tom of the Meta Lab likes to do is he will take a map out. He does it in Excel because he usually fiddles around at work when he's doing this kind of thing, or on his lunch or whatever breaks he gets. He'll put together a map in Excel and kind of go through the first turn against different matchups. That helps him kind of understand how he's going to react in certain ways, but also limits the ways he's going to get caught off guard and go from there. If you're not into doing it on the computer, I myself will whip out a map and just kind of look at the maps, count the squares, especially the maps that I plan on playing, along with other maps that I think might be counterpicks to my teams, where people will choose like certain maps, and I'll look at it and go, okay, well, this is what I want to do here, here, and here, and make my decisions focused on that. So these are the kinds of things you want to do to prepare, because this is just generic tournament prep at this point. It's not even just specifically for the pauper prep. This is just prep. This is such a misnomer. Fast forces, familiarize yourself with those. Familiarize yourself with all the bystanders that are in the format. Brace yourself for those. And yeah, just prepare yourself to have fun. Because this is a really fun format, but it's also really player defining. And to a certain degree, team defining. Like, there are teams that will do better than others in other cases. But this one will have a deeper kind of thing where it's a lot of people look at the high-level competitive game and they claim pay to win. And there's a lot of expensive figures that are very competitive. I'm not going to lie. Part of them being expensive is because they are competitive. But, that aside, this is a format where it's really time to shut up about that and get ready to play. Though some people will claim mine as pay to win because I acquired 11 Sentinels. Got to get them on the board first, guys. I don't know. I think that's about it. I've babbled for nothing and just kind of rah-rah'd you guys for 20 minutes because my original plan kind of died on me. Yeah, so Pauper States is this weekend and next weekend. I know in Ontario, down at Whitby in Comic Book Addiction, that's where I will be playing on Sunday. I was initially planning to go up to New York at WNY Games. Unfortunately, I was unable to make it up that way this time around. Sad, but that's life, as it were. If I really wanted to get there, I'd get off my butt and get a car. Last call on questions before we wrap this up, and say thanks to everybody who's watched the series up to here. Massive set of good lucks. Don't forget to get those teams on maps and practicing them. Grab a friend who's going to the event. Work with each other to build better teams. Find your improvements or help each other improve your play in certain matchups. Familiarize yourselves with all the maps that you need to familiarize yourself with. Grab a couple, adult drinks if you're an adult. Pops if you're a little too young for that. And just kind of chill out on the Thursday or spend some time on a Thursday, Friday, familiarizing yourself. Get a good night's sleep before the tournament. I always suggest that. It's probably the best way. And it's really hard sometimes. You get the nerves. You can't really sleep, but some people can't do it as well as others. I say get a good night's sleep. Brace yourself with some water. Have a decent breakfast. And bring some snacks because tournaments tend to run long and they don't really care if you haven't eaten lunch beforehand. Being part of a tournament is a callous life. It's unforgiving and they are mean to you. No, they take you out back and beat you if you break the rules. They don't do that. They do not do that. Nobody does that. I'm goofing around. I'm just trying to buy for time. But in the meantime, have a good night, everybody. Thanks for the patrons at patreon.com/Heroclix. And thanks to our sponsors over at majesticcg.com/jpacks/insiders. Good luck. Thanks for being crazy with me. I will see you guys next week on Thursday as I cover the hindsight episode, things we learned, and how to prepare for those who have the state pauper events next week. I will share the burden of my experience with you guys so you guys have a better chance. Have a wonderful evening. Apologies for the short episode.